Hey everyone, welcome to Hearth of Haemonia. My name is Kate, and today I want to share the story of the most notorious witch in all of ancient Greece. She didn't wear a pointy hat or have warts on her nose, and she flew in a dragon-pulled chariot instead of a broomstick. But everyone acknowledged that her power was the greatest among those who practiced magic. Her life was difficult and tragic, and the struggles she faced at the whim of the gods drove her to madness. Because of her suffering, she committed an unspeakable act, choosing vengeance over all else, even her own children. In the end, she was alone, with no family, no country, and no hope of a normal, safe, or happy life. But before all that, she was just a girl. Medea grew up in Colchis, on the eastern coast of the Black Sea. Her father Aeetes was king there, son of the sun god Helios and brother to Circe, the famous witch whose magic wand enchanted Odysseus and turned his crewmates into swine. In some versions of the story, Circe's mother is Hecate herself, the goddess of witchcraft, who taught Medea her magic. As a priestess of Hecate, Medea learned pharmakeia, the art of herbal magic. With her herbal spells, Medea can stop fire, make rivers run backwards in their course, control the stars, and even draw down the moon from the sky. She was already established as a pharmaca and devotee of the dark goddess when she became the subject of a cosmic attack. The goddesses Hera, also known as Juno, and Aphrodite, also known as Venus, were watching her. They needed Medea to help the hero Jason on his quest for the Golden Fleece, an act which would change the course of her life. The goddesses knew that the girl would never help her father's enemy, so they conspired to force her hand. Hera and Aphrodite convinced Aphrodite's son Eros, also called Cupid, to shoot the unsuspecting girl with one of his arrows, making her fall in love with Jason. Jason had come to Colchis with his crew aboard the ship Argo. They were looking for the Golden Fleece, a magical fleece from a golden ram which had once belonged to Jason's family, who were the rulers in Iolchos. His step-uncle Peleus had overthrown the rightful king and thrown most of the family into prison. Jason, a baby at the time, was smuggled away to safety. He was raised by the centaur Chiron and eventually returned to Iolchos to avenge his family and take his rightful place on the throne. His arrival had been foretold, and Peleus knew he couldn't defeat the hero in battle, so he sent him on a quest to bring back the Golden Fleece. The golden ram came from the gods and was given to Jason's family when Peleus was driving everyone out. Jason's ancestors, Phrixus and Hele, rode out of Iolchos on the ram. Hele couldn't hold on and fell to her death over the straits the Greeks called Hellespont. Phrixus survived, eventually coming to Colchis and forming a friendship and kinship with Aeetes, Medea's father. The ram was sacrificed, and the Golden Fleece had remained in Aeetes' palace in Colchis ever since. To retrieve it, Jason assembled a crew of the most accomplished and renowned heroes of the age and sailed to Colchis, where the young Medea first set eyes on him. Stricken by Eros' poisonous arrow, Medea burned with passion for Jason, and her anguish confined her to her bed for long stretches, weeping and wailing, fluctuating between hope and despair. The situation only worsened after Jason confronted Aeetes and demanded the fleece be returned to the family of Phrixus. Aeetes agreed, on one condition. Jason was to complete 3 impossible tasks to prove his worth, and then the fleece would be his. First, he needed to plow a field with bulls who breathed fire. Next, defeat an army of men birthed from the scattered teeth of dragons. And finally, fight the dragon which guarded the fleece itself. Although a skillful sailor and a competent soldier, Jason's heroic powers did not stretch beyond ordinary human capabilities. Although he agreed to the challenge, he knew that Aeetes knew, that it would be his death. At a loss of what to do, Jason returned to the Argo and told the crew what had occurred. One of his crewmates suggested that he seek out the witch Medea, a young girl, a pharmaca by reputation, whose powerful spells might be able to help him. With no other options, Jason snuck towards the palace complex at night. He came to a clearing at the entrance to the temple of Hecate, where he found Medea. She had been unable to sleep due to her suffering, and had been informed by Aphrodite, who was disguised as Circe, that the only way to cure herself and protect the man she now madly loved was to help him beat her father's challenges. Medea knew that to help Jason would be to betray her family, but she was so afflicted by Eros' arrow that she resolved to intervene. The two met at the temple of Hecate in the middle of the night, each fascinated and somewhat frightened of the other. Medea offered magic to Jason, an herb that would make him impervious to fire. In return, Jason offered to take her back with him, as his bride. With Medea's help, Jason yoked the bulls and defeated the dragonborn men, successfully stealing the fleece from its dragon guardian. Aeetes was enraged. Jason kept his promise to Medea, and when he and the Argonauts left Colchis, Medea came along. She knew from the moment she decided to help Jason, she was betraying her family. And she knew that once she stepped onto that ship, she would never be able to return to Colchis. From now on, she put her faith in this man, this Greek hero who had captured her heart. She and Jason married and had 2 children on their long journey back to Greece. But the Argonauts weren't alone. Medea's brother Apsyrtos had been chasing the ship, trying to bring Medea back to their father. When he finally caught up to them, Medea did the unthinkable. She murdered her brother and dismembered him, tossing his limbs into the sea as they sailed away. She hoped that the Colchians would be delayed by gathering up the pieces of his body. While they were retrieving Apsyrtos' limbs, without which proper burial was impossible, the Argonauts escaped. That was Medea's first murder. There would be more. They crossed seas and deserts, dragging the Argo whenever they needed to cross land. After years of travel, they finally reached Iolchos. Jason reunited with his father, Aeson, but found his health failing. Medea used her magic, performing a ritual to restore him to full health, adding years to his life and restoring youth to his body. The usurper Peleus still held power in Iolchos, and Medea took matters into her own hands. She told Peleus's daughters how her magic restored Aeson's youth and offered to repeat the ritual for their father. The girls were eager to do so, especially after Medea demonstrated the ritual to them with a ram. But Medea lied to them. The ritual she showed them was different from the one she had performed on Aeson. The ram was slaughtered, its limbs scattered and burned. From the ashes, a ram arose, a newborn. Peleus's daughters insisted on performing the ritual at once. Medea directed the girls to lay her father down and slaughter him, dismembering him and throwing his limbs into the fire, just as she had done with the ram. But Peleus was not reborn. Medea had tricked the girls into murdering their father to get him out of Jason's way. With Peleus gone, the rightful king Aeson could once again rule over Iolchos, and her contribution would impress her husband. Or so she thought. She never anticipated the chaos that followed the false king's murder. She and Jason were driven from the city. They fled with their children to Corinth, a city that welcomed Jason immediately upon his arrival. Jason began to have concerns about Medea's behavior, and about his own safety as the husband of a murderess. Wanting to secure his position, he made arrangements to join the Corinthian royalty by marrying the daughter of the king. He told Medea that his intent was to keep her as a consort and provide for their children, a less than ideal arrangement, but one that would protect all of them from the danger that Medea's actions had caused. Enraged at Jason's betrayal and refusing to be sidelined by a princess, Medea seethed and wailed, telling anyone who would listen about the injustice of her situation. Word of her tantrum reached the king, who ultimately banished her from Corinth. Medea refused to accept this treatment and plotted her revenge. She would make Jason suffer for what he'd done to her, taking her far from home on his wretched ship, bringing her to a land where she was a foreigner, a woman and a witch who would never be trusted by the local population. And now this, abandoning her and her children to advance his own position. Mad with hatred, she first set out to kill Jason's new bride and the king who had ordered her banishment. Using her herbal craft, she laced a robe and headpiece with deadly poison and presented it to the girl and her father as a wedding gift. When the girl donned the pieces, they combusted and she died on the spot. Her grief-stricken father threw himself on her lifeless body, and when he touched the cursed garments, the poison killed him as well. Meanwhile, Medea was facing the reality of what she'd done. She'd killed another monarch, and she certainly couldn't count on her husband to stand by her any longer. She and her children would be pursued to the ends of the earth by the enemies she'd made, and when they were caught, they would be murdered. Knowing that her children's days were numbered, and still under the influence of blind rage, jealousy, and the madness induced by Eros's arrow, Medea made the unthinkable decision. To kill her own children. She justified her actions by saying that it would be better for them to die at her hands than at the hands of their enemies. But she also relished in the pain their death would cause to Jason. In the end, she slaughtered them and left their bodies with their devastated father. Then she flew away on a chariot pulled by dragons, the sunbark itself that belonged to her grandfather. Some say she came to Athens, whose king received her with kindness, but the events of her life after this tragic moment are sparsely reported. The story of Medea is one of divine indifference, madness, and murder. It is a tale of the suffering of an outcast, mistrusted for her gifts, and used by someone who she thought would protect her. In the end, it is a cautionary tale about revenge and how those who seek it suffer along with their victims. Medea's reputation spread across ancient Greece and later ancient Rome. Her name appears in stories that aren't even about her, as passing references to her extraordinary abilities, or as a stand-in for all of witchcraft. The name Medea came to more clearly mean witch than witch itself. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. This format was an experiment, and I'd love to know what you think. If you did like the video, you can let me know by leaving a thumbs up down below, and if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. I post videos about belief in the ancient world almost every week. Thanks again for watching, I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.